Here they are, the 4 books off my shelf. These are 4 books that all help us see the power of our imagination. Let's get started. Can you see the back of this book? The back of this book fills me with wonder. I just wonder what's going on and where they are headed. This book is called Beyond the Pond, and we'll find out where these 2 are headed. A boy and his dog are turning an ordinary day at home into something more. Just behind an ordinary house filled with too little fun, Ernest D. had decided today would be the day that he'd explore the depths of his pond. So he tried sticking a stick and dipping a hook and sinking a stone, but nothing touched. "My pond has no bottom," said Ernest D. And with that, Ernest D. dove down between the fishes and the frogs, past the squid and sharks and shapeless things, into his pond forever deep. Ernest D. dove farther into his pond than anyone had ever gone before, until at last he came up on the other side, into a new land. It was oh so tiny, oh so tall, and every shape in between. Oh, I like the sound of that. Every shape in between. Our imagination has the power to think of everything and anything. Every shape in between. Best of all, it was just for him. And he spent the day exploring and discovering and had adventures. And at the end of it all, and in the moment between moonset and sunrise, Ernest D. looked upon the endlessness of his newly discovered land. Endlessness, another wonderful word that can describe our imagination. It has no limit. It has no end. It's whatever we can think of. Endlessness. "All this was hiding in my pond," said Ernest D. "How exceptional." And then he returned home. But when he got back home, things had changed a little. He was seeing things differently. But the world wasn't quite as he had left it. His house seemed a little less small, and his town looked a little less ordinary. Beyond every street and silent corner was a place unexplored. "Exceptional," said Ernest D. That's a wonderful word, exceptional. He had turned his ordinary day into something exceptional, using his imagination. And we have the power to do that too. My garden. In this story, this little girl is gardening with her mother, and she uses her imagination to turn the garden into more than just your everyday garden. Let's see what she does. My mother has a garden. I'm her helper. I water, I weed, and I chase away the rabbits so that they don't eat all the lettuce. It's hard work, and my mother's garden is very nice. But if I had a garden, if, that's such a powerful word. If can help you imagine more. In my garden, the flowers could change color just by thinking about it. Pink, blue, green, purple, even patterns. If I planted seashells, I'd grow seashells. Sometimes in my garden, good, unusual things would just pop up. Buttons and umbrellas and rusty old keys. Did you hear that word? Unusual. When you use your imagination, you can think up unusual things. Things that we don't usually see, such as keys growing on a plant. At night, the morning glories would stay open, shining like stars, and the strawberries would glow like lanterns. It's night now. Only the fireflies in the porch light are glowing. Before bed, I take one seashell from the shelf in my room and go to the garden. I poke the seashell into the ground. Who knows what might happen? Ooh. Wonderful question. Who knows what might happen? In your imagination, all sorts of things can happen. Who knows? I cover it up with dirt and pat down the dirt with my foot. So she transformed an ordinary garden, a usual garden, into a magical, creative, fantastic garden. Our imagination has the power to transform, to change the usual into the unusual. Imagine that. A story of a girl and her stuffed owl named Hoot. Olive had a great big imagination, which was only just a smidge smaller than her huge heart. Her best friend Hoot had a heart that was equally big. His imagination, however, well, one rainy day, Hoot discovered something unexpected. "I lost it," said Hoot. "Lost what?" asked Olive. "My imagination," he replied, "and I can't remember where I had it last." Then he got a more upsetting idea. Or maybe my imaginator is broken. "I don't think it works like that," said Olive. "But if it is broken, we should try to fix it." "How?" asked Hoot. Olive was puzzled. "Actually, I don't know. You just pretend like something is, even though it really isn't." Imagination. To pretend like something is, even though it really isn't. That's one way to use your imagination. Just then the rain began to beat harder against the window. "I know," she said. "What if the water gets higher than just a little and the puddles grow really big?" Suddenly Olive felt the house lurch. "Hoot!" cried Olive. "Do you feel that? We're floating away." But Hoot felt nothing. "It's only a puddle," he said, looking out the window. Olive sighed. A puddle isn't a very good adventure. And they tried all sorts of different things to help Hoot find his imagination. So Olive tried something sleepy, then something upside down, and then perhaps 1 or 10 other somethings. But nothing worked. "Maybe I can't be fixed," said Hoot. "Or maybe you're not really trying," said Olive. Finally, in a small voice, Hoot spoke. "Why is it, when my imagination is the thing that's broken, it's my heart that hurts the most?" "That's it!" shouted Olive. She had forgotten the most important part. "You have to imagine with this," she said, placing her hand over Hoot's heart. "Should I try again?" asked Hoot. "You should always try again," said Olive. Well, I just like that. You should always try again. Definitely. Hoot closed his eyes. "I see something," said Hoot, "but it's so small." "That's how everything starts," replied Olive. "If you want it to grow, you have to love it." So Hoot imagined again with his whole huge heart. If you want it to grow, you have to love it. If you want your imagination to grow, you need to feel it with your heart, because imagination requires courage and bravery. "You did it!" shouted Olive. "Of course I did," said Hoot. But that was only the beginning. That day they played till their laughs finally turned into tired giggles. "Thank you," said Hoot. "For what?" asked Olive. "For showing me the most important part." Olive smiled. Imagination can expand and grow and change things, but all that requires bravery and courage to believe in the unusual, to believe in the change that you can create into the world that you can imagine. And that's what Olive and Hoot discovered. The Noisy Paint Box. This is a historical fiction book, and it's about the colors and sounds of Kandinsky's abstract art. And it has a wonderful quote in the front, written by the illustrator, that says, "For all young artists who look and listen with brave hearts." Vasya Kandinsky spent his days learning to be a proper Russian boy. He studied bookfuls of math, science, and history. He practiced piano scales to the marching click of the metronome. He sat stiff and straight at dressed-up dinners while the grown-ups talked and talked and talked. Vasya's well-off world was perfectly polite until the day his aunt gave him a small wooden paint box. Vasya painted the sound of colors. He spun a bright lemon circle onto the canvas. It clinked like the highest notes on the keyboard. He brushed a powerful navy rectangle that vibrated deeply like the lowest cello strings. He tossed up jagged swashes of blaring crimson and added cheerful dots of burbling green, clanging orange, and tinkling violet. Vasya painted and painted until the colors went quiet. "Look what I made!" shouted Vasya. "Is it a house?" asked Auntie. "Is it a flower?" asked Mama. "What's it supposed to be?" asked Papa. "It's music," said Vasya, waltzing his painting around the house. "Calm down," said Mama. "Do some math," said Papa. "Heavens," said Auntie, "this boy needs a proper art class." And he grew up, and as he grew up, he took art classes and went to school, and he was always told that he should paint what he sees, as in objects or people. Vasya wanted to paint the colors he heard, but maybe the famous teachers knew best. Once again, Vasya put houses and flowers, animals and people into his paintings, just like everyone expected. The teachers were happy. Vasya was not. His artist friends understood. They, too, were tired of painting pretty landscapes and pretty ladies. They thought art needed to change. "Art should make you feel," Vasya told them, "like music." "Exactly," said his friends, but none of them knew how to paint feelings, until the day Vasya grew brave enough and invited the world to see the paintings roaring from his noisy paint box. Until he grew brave enough to share what he was imagining, brave enough to share what he was feeling. Snapping cerulean points, crunching crimson squares, whispering charcoal lines, Vasya named these paintings after the music he loved. With his noisy paint box, Vasya Kandinsky created something entirely new, abstract art. So imagination can help us create and invent and innovate new things, but imagination and sharing your imagination requires bravery and courage. And I believe we all have that. All four of these books give a little bit of a different look into how imagination can help us. Beyond the Pond shows us how we can turn the ordinary into the exceptional using our imagination. My Garden shows us how we can transform kind of the everyday garden into a dream place, into a fantasy land. And Imagine That, it shows us how we can take our imagination and it starts small, and with courage and heart we can grow it into more. And The Noisy Paint Box shows us how we can take our imagination and the bravery to share it and create and innovate and come up with new ideas and new ways to do things. And I'll end this video with a craft involving shapes and transforming shapes into more. So take a peek at that. Thanks. Bye.